Alrighty, gang, today we went to Aldi's with a very specific vision in mind, and this is going to be a different kind of video. I'm going to cook 3 different meals in this video, so it's going to be taking place over a couple different days. But I went to Aldi's with one goal in mind, which is try to make 3 meals for as cheap as possible. I have seemed to have lost my receipts, but I also bought some things that weren't a part of it. So even if I showed you the receipt, my receipt was $33, and the food that I'm actually using is $24.55. So I'm going to kind of break down what I got and what all I'm going to be using it for. So one of the first things, frozen veggies is insanely cheap. So I immediately went to that section. I was like, what kind of quick veggies can I get? Obviously, I'm immediately thinking broccoli because chicken, broccoli, and rice, that's like a very standard like guy meal for somebody who's my age. So I got chicken for sure. I got the only skinless, boneless chicken thighs that they had, and it happened to be a big boy pack. And I was like, you know what? We'll work with this because I can do 2 meals with these. So one day we're going to do chicken and rice. So I also got 90-second rice. This is 2 servings in here. And we also got steamed Brussels sprouts for that meal. And I regularly have a bunch of seasonings and sauces in my house, so I will probably flare that up with seasonings and sauces, but obviously I'm not going to include that in the budget, so I'm just going to show you how to make like the most basic, generic stuff that is good with these ingredients. But I am going to use like essential seasonings that I feel like you should have: salt, pepper, garlic powder. But that's going to take 3 of those chicken thighs, and then we're going to have 3 more. And for that, I'm going to do something a lot more exciting, which honestly might have boosted the budget a little bit, but I want to still have good food. We got a thing of pizza dough, 4 cheese chicken Alfredo, 4 cheese Alfredo, and some broccoli. And for that, we're going to make a chicken Alfredo calzone. And I'm expecting that to be really good. I also got Gouda cheese, which I'm going to be using for that. And for this last meal that we're going to be making, 8 breakfast burritos. I got myself an entire dozen of eggs. I got myself a pound of sausage. I'm hoping that when I cook that up and I throw in this Gouda cheese that I can spread that out amongst those 8 tortilla shells, but I will obviously show you day of how much I'm able to make with those ingredients. Alrighty, now we're going to make the first meal. Today is a new day, and I'm going to be meal prepping breakfast burritos. So for this recipe, you are going to need 11 of the eggs that we got. And before somebody's like, Blake, you got an entire dozen of eggs, I'm going to save one of them for when I make the chicken and rice so that I could like make fried rice basically instead of regular rice. And so for that means we have 11 eggs and an entire pound of sausage to make hopefully 8 burritos. Now I will say this: if you plan on making this recipe and you want to add some veggies to your breakfast burrito, which I would highly recommend, go to a store that isn't Aldi's where you can individually buy bell peppers. An individual bell pepper is usually about 70 cents. And that way it would be, put the budget over $25, it'd be like $25.14 or something like that. But it definitely would be worth it to add a veggie to this meal. So I will be making mine with bell peppers, but because you guys probably do not have bell peppers, or if you do happen to swing by a store and get a bell pepper, you can follow this recipe. But if you're making this recipe without bell peppers, the answer is quite simple: just don't do the bell peppers part. But we're going to start off by cooking our sausage. We're going to do it on a skillet on medium heat and cook it for probably about like 5 to 6 minutes. Okay, while it's cooking, we can actually go ahead and prep our eggs. So like I said, I'm going to just use 11 of them. So I'm going to go ahead and crack 11 of them into a bowl. And here's me doing a little time lapse of that. I was really struggling. Like after like 5 eggs, I had to go and wash my hands. And I was also trying to stir the sausage. And then I was doing everything else all at once. But here's me cracking all of the eggs. And then this is, once again, if you have it, you could add a splash of milk. If you don't have milk, no worries. It's not that big of a difference. And personally, for me, whenever I season my eggs, I don't like to do it when they're in the bowl like this because I feel like it never mixes right. So for now, we're just going to grab either a fork or a whisk and try to make this as frothy as possible, crushing all of the yolks and just kind of getting it all perfectly emulsified. Okay, once you've done that, the sausage is pretty much ready to be cooked up, and we're going to go ahead and put this in another container. Okay, and this is the step you can skip if you do not have a bell pepper, but I'm going to go ahead and chop up a bell pepper and cook it in that sausage grease. Okay, once I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and put those to the side as well, and now it's finally time for our eggs. We're going to want to put a decent bit of butter down on the pan, or olive oil, whatever you use to cook. Okay, now we're going to give that butter a little bit of time to melt down here, and then we're going to go ahead and put our eggs directly into the pan and constantly stir it up and mix it up. And then I will show you guys while I'm doing that what seasonings I like to use in my eggs. So starting off, here's a little time lapse of me obviously getting those in there. And like I said, you want to just constantly be mixing these. The best way to get good scrambled eggs is to never stop mixing it. From the second you put it in the pan, you just gotta mix and mix and mix and fold and fold and fold and fold. Okay, now that it's starting to cook up a little bit, I really gotta focus on making sure that I'm still kind of stirring the pot as much as possible, but I'm gonna quickly kind of show you guys what seasonings I'm going to be adding in here. So obviously I'm Italian. We put garlic powder in literally everything. I made a PB&J with garlic powder one time. Next up, we're going to put a little bit of Italian seasoning. I only have basil right now, but if you have actual Italian seasoning mix, I would use that. Or probably a little bit of oregano, but either way, we want some green leafy stuff in there. And then for spice factor, we're going to put in a little bit of smoked paprika. And personally, I love Southwest style breakfast burritos, so I'm going to put a little bit of chipotle seasoning in there. If you do not have any of those seasonings, salt, pepper, garlic powder works perfectly fine. And I forgot to mention, I am also adding, obviously, salt and pepper, because you can't make something like eggs without putting salt and pepper in there. I feel like that's like almost criminal. So we're going to add those, and then we're going to add in half a bag of our shredded cheese. Like I said, I got Gouda. That was a splurge. I could have potentially gotten, Colby Jack or cheddar for a little bit cheaper, but I'm a big fan of Gouda cheese, and I think that this will actually really make this burrito taste even better, and especially because I don't have like salsa or anything to put in these, so I'm going to need something to make the flavor stand out a little bit more. Okay, now that we've added in our seasonings and our cheeses, we're going to keep mixing it around until the cheese is melted. And then once the cheese melts, you can actually go ahead and take this off the heat, add back in your sausage and your peppers, and then we're going to let this just kind of chill for about like 10-15 minutes. So that way when we're wrapping our burritos, we're not burning the fuck out of our hands. Okay, also, by the way, I found the receipt, so I wanted to kind of do a price breakdown for this specific meal. It's going to be about $10.08, but with that bag of cheese, we only used half of it, so it honestly would be closer to like $9. But like I said, I also added a bell pepper, which is going to be about 73 cents. So it's probably going to be close to that $10 mark in the end. So that's obviously one of the more expensive meals we got here. Okay, while I was at it, I decided to go ahead and do the breakdown for all the prices. So this is the most expensive one, the one that we just did, the breakfast burritos. And then we got the chicken and rice recipe that we're going to be making. $139 for the Brussels sprouts, $139 for the rice, $352 because that's half the price of the big pack of chicken we got. That one's $6.30 for arguably 3 servings of food. That is the big thing. That one's the cheapest, but it's also the least amount of servings, so that makes sense. The breakfast burritos, I would argue, is 4 servings, because if you have 2 burritos per serving, like that arguably for some people even it would actually be like 6 servings, because they can't eat 2 burritos in one sitting. I can, and I probably will. But so value-wise, those are actually probably pretty similar, even though that one's like $4 more. And then the last recipe we're going to be making, we got ourselves a chicken Alfredo calzone. That one's going to be $7.65 in total, because we got, once again, that's half the pack of chicken that we got. And then we have the pizza dough price right there, the broccoli price right there, and then that bottom price is the price for the Alfredo sauce that we got. So our grand total actually was $24.03. And like I said, we're making 3 meals that all have a decent bit of servings, because I haven't made that calzone yet, but I guarantee you that's at least 4 servings of a calzone more than likely. Okay, and I'm going to try to wrap 4 at a time here, so that way I can kind of like evenly distribute it and make sure that I actually have enough to do all 8 tortilla shells. But I'm looking at this, that's a lot of stuff right there. I feel like I should be pretty good. Okay, so I just made a video showing you guys how I wrap my tortillas, and then I realized it was not at an angle where you could even see what I was doing. So when you put your stuff in the tortillas, you want to kind of keep it in this general area right here, and then when you fold it, you want to go corners like this into the middle, fold it up like that, try to get as far this way as you possibly can, really scoop it under there, and then fold these parts under, and then just kind of go over that last flap like that. So it's going to be something sort of kind of like this. And whenever you do that, you're going to wrap it up in a tinfoil wrap, and it'll really make sure it's nice and secure. And when you heat it up, you can just throw it in the oven for about 15-20 minutes, and it comes out perfectly ready, pretty good. Also, I just said 15 to 20 minutes. That's if you're freezing them. I'm going to be freezing them. If you're just putting them in the refrigerator and you plan on having them this week, you take it out of the refrigerator, throw it in the oven for about 8 minutes, and it'll be pretty good. But I'm going to go ahead and make one to show you guys exactly how I'm doing this. So like I said earlier, you want to microwave your tortilla. I did that. I'm going to go ahead and try to scoop just a fair amount onto this wrap. And like I said, you want to kind of try to keep it more to one half of the wrap. So we're going to be doing it more towards the front side here. And probably doing another little scoop like that, something like that. And then to wrap it, it's going to be very simple, very easy. Oh crap, this is going to be too small, huh? That's a little small, but that's okay. This is the first one. It was a test run. It's not going to be perfect, but like I said, wrap it just like that, and then you can wrap it in the tin foil, and it'll keep it nice and secure for you.
And honestly, that was not the best angle, but here's more videos of me doing it, and it's such an easy process. You just put some on one half of the burrito, roll everything over, wrap everything under, and yeah, I don't know if that made any sense, but yeah, that's me doing it for the rest of them, and that last one's gonna be huge. I'm so
And
excited.
there you have it, just like that. You have 8 breakfast burritos that are really good, high quality, easy to reheat, and ready to go. And now I will see you guys when it's time to make the chicken and rice super easy recipe. Alrighty, chat, and now for the next meal, we're going to be making just a simple chicken and rice recipe. So, starting off, we're going to take our big ass pack of chicken thighs and go ahead and evenly distribute this into 2 separate servings for 2 separate meals that we're making with it. Okay, and that was fairly simple. There were 8 thighs in there, so we're going to go ahead and pull out 4 for today and put the other 4 in a freezer bag and just go ahead and throw them in the fridge for the time being because I'll probably use them at some point in the next 2 days. Okay, so we're going to want to go ahead and take the chicken that we're using and we're going to chop it up. I'm going to do this with a pair of scissors because with chicken thighs, they have a bunch of like little pieces that kind of come off super easily, so it's just going to be easier to do it with scissors. Okay, and once you chop it up, it's going to look a little something like this. The reason I prefer chicken thighs to chicken breast when it comes to like recipes like this, you could overcook this a little bit and it's just going to get more tender and it's still going to be really good and juicy. If you get chicken breast and you overcook it, it will be so dry that you will regret all of your life decisions of getting chicken breast. So in my personal opinion, if you're using chicken breast, it's good for if you make fried chicken, chicken nuggets, your own crispy chicken sandwich, chicken parm, really good for chicken breast. But if you're making some kind of stir fry type dish like what I'm currently doing, chicken thighs all the way. So we got this here. I'm going to go ahead and season it up. I got 6 seasonings I'm going to use, and I'm also going to put in a little bit of soy sauce. If you do not have soy sauce, don't worry about it. I guarantee you this will still be good without it. But if you want to get soy sauce, go to your local Chinese restaurant. They usually have them on a desk. You can just take a couple. It is free. Okay? Okay. We're going to rapid fire through the seasonings. First up, lemon pepper. I'm going to use a little bit of chipotle powder. If you don't have chipotle powder, chili powder would also do just fine. If you don't have chili powder, you should buy chili powder. That's a basic one you should have. Next up, a little bit of smoked paprika. Anytime I ever make anything with chicken or eggs, for that matter, you know, baby unalive chickens, that's depressing. I don't know why I said that. I will always use paprika. Paprika is always a good one. Garlic powder, because I'm Italian. If I don't use garlic powder, I will literally perish. A little bit of anything green. Typically, I would use oregano. We don't have oregano. We have basil. Basil will do. Also, if you have Italian seasoning, once again, Italian seasoning would be good for that. And then we're going to throw in some sesame seeds. And also, if you had ground ginger, I would recommend ground ginger. I don't personally have ground ginger. Okay, and then last but not least, we're going to throw in some pepper. And if you are not using soy sauce, go ahead and throw in some salt. But since I am using soy sauce, it has a decent bit of sodium already. I do not need more salt than that. Also, for reference, when you season chicken, if you are not looking at it and thinking, that might be too much, you didn't do enough, okay? If you're not slightly thinking, wow, that's way too much, you didn't do it right. Because when it cooks, a lot of this is going to cook off of it, and that's not fun. Now it's going to look something like this. You're going to want to go ahead and cook that on the stove on medium heat. And we're also going to want to throw in just a little bit of olive oil when we toss this up and mix up the seasoning. Okay, you really want to try your best to spread everything evenly on the pan, and you really want to make sure that everything is coated in some form of seasoning or at least a little bit of sauce. And like I said, we're going to cook this on high, so we're going to go ahead and do that. And while we're doing that, we can actually go ahead and grab our 90-second rice packet. Okay, and you're going to want to follow the instructions on yours. Mine is very simple. I just want to open it up partially, put it in the microwave for 90 seconds. Okay, and then once that comes up, I'm going to show you guys how to make that into like a little fried rice concoction, which is going to be really fun. And then we're just going to have to microwave the Brussels sprouts, and everything's going to come together pretty quickly with this meal. Okay, so for your fried rice, you want to go ahead and grab a pot. We're going to go ahead and grab this bad boy. We're going to put a little bit of butter down on the bottom. We're going to crack that 1 extra egg that we had left over in here as well. Let that cook for a little bit, and then just throw the rice on top, and then mixy. I also potentially might throw some soy sauce in here. Once again, if you don't have soy sauce, this is still going to be pretty good if you like regular rice, because I personally am a fan of regular rice. Also, when it comes to the budget, I'm having Brussels sprouts. These actually were the most expensive frozen veggie that they had at Aldi's, except for obviously like the really fancy organic stuff. So you also could have went with like sweet peas or like corn or something, and this meal would have been even cheaper, like by 40 cents. But that being said, this is a steam and bag thing, so I'm just going to go ahead and throw it in the microwave, and this entire meal is going to be ready in like literally 15 minutes. Okay, this is kind of what the final product looks like. I went ahead and just threw everything into one pan. And I just wanted to remind you guys, that is $6.30 worth of food. Isn't that crazy? You can get like 2 McChickens for that price. But yeah, that's 2 meals down, and then I will see you guys when I make my calzones. So, very excited about those as well, but damn, that looks like that came out pretty decent. Look at that! Alrighty, chat, and now for the last meal we're going to be making. I have said it probably 3 times already in the video. We're making a chicken Alfredo calzone. I'm insanely excited about this. First thing I want to do is preheat my oven, because it likes to take its time to do that a little bit. But I decided I was going to do broccoli with this. You could probably do this with spinach as well. But personally, what I'm going to do, I got this broccoli that steams in bag. I'm going to go ahead and do that. But I'm also going to sear it on a pan afterwards so we could potentially get a little bit of a crispy crisp situation. And then we're going to go ahead and cook up our chicken. Once again, like I chopped it up the other day, just using a pair of scissors. I'm going to do that, just give it a bunch of little snips. And then we're just going to season it with basil, garlic powder, salt, pepper. Okay, now once again with that chicken, you're going to want to coat it with all those seasonings. I also ended up putting in a little bit of paprika, and you want to throw it on the stove at about high heat for maybe 4 or 5 minutes, and then also want to make sure that's as evenly distributed as you could possibly get it. And now while that's cooking up, we're going to take our broccoli, which I went ahead and steamed in the microwave, and I'm going to go ahead and chop these up into little smaller pieces. Okay, now that the chicken is all mostly cooked up, we're just going to go ahead and throw that chopped up broccoli into the same pan with it, and kind of let them cook up together. And then we're also going to go ahead and put some of the sauce in there so that way it can all connect and be emulsified. And I'm not going to go ahead and put the entire can in there. I'm just going to go ahead and do maybe like to about where the text right there is. Okay, I lied. I threw the majority of the can in there. Okay, now that that's had a chance to all cook together for a little bit, I'm going to go ahead and put it to the side, take it off the heat, because we're going to want that to chill for maybe about 10 minutes or so before we try folding it in a calzone, because that will burn the fuck out of your hands. Okay, now while we're waiting for that to chill, we are going to want a nice clean space that we can go ahead and stretch our dough out and roll it out. So I'm going to go ahead and clean down this table right here. Okay, now typically when you're using pizza dough and you're going to be stretching it out, you're going to want something to dust the surface. Like usually I would use flour. But fun fact, I didn't think about this. I don't currently have flour. So I'm going to go ahead and do a little bit of garlic powder and then just slap this down. But now when you're stretching your pizza dough, I will recommend using gravity and letting gravity do the work. You kind of want to take it by one side, take it by the other side, just kind of stretch it out as much as physically possible. If you had flour and you could put flour down, this would be a good time to pull out a rolling pin. You know, we also don't have a rolling pin, but I'm going to make this work. I'm a genius. I'll figure it out. Okay, now for a calzone, you're going to want to try to make it as rectangular of a shape as you can. So this is what we got going for us. And you're just going to want to kind of do 2 rows of your topping. So we're going to put a little row here and a little row here. And then the goal is to flip over and then flip over, if that makes sense. Alrighty, and here's a little time lapse of me doing that, and I also went ahead and put a little bit of extra Alfredo sauce on top and that Gouda cheese that we had left over from earlier, and this is me wrapping it up and throwing it on the pan. Putting this onto the pan usually would go a lot smoother because it would have like the flour coating on it and it wouldn't be as sticky. I kind of made a little error in transit and created a giant hole there, so I took some of the extra dough from this side, slapped it on there. Hopefully it's going to cover it enough, but now you just want to put a little bit of olive oil on top, put a little bit of garlic powder on top, and then we're going to throw this bad boy in the oven at 400 degrees for about 15 to 20 minutes. And now while that's in the oven, we're going to want to go ahead and clean up our mess. Alrighty, chat. Now this is what it's going to look like coming out of the oven. Obviously, I have a hole in it. That's not to be expected, but that being said, it's nice and crispified. It looks like it's going to be absolutely yummy and delicious, and I would argue that's probably at least 3 servings. I would like to say that this video was a success. But yeah, that being said, that was going to be it for this video, guys. Thank you guys so much for coming by and checking it out. I love and appreciate you guys so much for watching. If you liked it, feel free to like and subscribe, and I'll hopefully see you guys in the next one. Peace out. Bow. Bow. Bow.